Welcome to the Mo podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
Mo, a place for me, others, everyone. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Mo Foundation podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you here. Now today's episode is going to be hosted by the wonderful Alex Smith, who is a Mo trainer and coach himself, and he's going to be talking to Imani Clough-Brown, who is also a phenomenal coach working with young people and equipping them with the tools that they need to succeed. Now don't be fooled. Imani is a powerhouse of an individual, and this isn't the only thing that she does. She inspires, encourages, and explores so very deeply and in such a humble way. I hope that you enjoy it as much as we have, and feel free to share it, like it, comment your thoughts and feedback. Now, without further ado, let's get into it.
And now I have the blessing to introduce the brilliant and fantastic Imani Clough-Brown. Welcome, Imani. Thanks for joining us on Podventures.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for that introduction.
You're welcome. And would you go a little bit deeper into an introduction and tell us a bit about who you are, but without referencing job titles, your age, or your relation to anybody else?
That's a good way to introduce yourself. I think naturally that's what we end up doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would say maybe I'll go with a bit about who I am, my personality. I'd say I'm a quietly confident person who's probably been on a bit of a journey with learning to be comfortable with that. So yeah, I'd say I'm quietly confident, someone who really values how I spend my time and who I spend that time with. Connection is really important to me, and finding meaning in the relationships that I have with people, whether that be in friendships, in workspaces, like connection and is important to me, but leaning into my quiet confidence is something that I'm learning to get more comfortable with.
I love that. And where might we find you in your spare time?
Recharging. I get probably spending some time alone, reading articles or listening to podcasts that I haven't had time to listen to in my day-to-day, and probably trying to figure out how I'm gonna reconnect with kickboxing, which is a sport that I enjoy, but I haven't had much time to reconnect with it in the last couple of years. But at the moment it's at the forefront of my mind as something that I want to reconnect with. So you might find me listening to podcasts, reading articles that I haven't had a chance to get round to, or figuring out how I can reconnect with my sport of choice.
Wicked. And when was it that you were last kickboxing?
Prior to the pandemic, actually. So when the pandemic happened back in 2020, obviously we were all in lockdown and I wasn't able to do my kickboxing. And then when we all emerged again, it was very much like, do I want to be doing a contact sport and be that close to people? But now I think I've come to terms with that. This is something that brings me a bit of joy, the discipline that I need. So but I'd done it for quite a few years before that.
Wicked. Yeah, that adjustment from, or readjusting to social norms, particularly relating to space and contact, I think took all of us some time, or changed how we all felt about that in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And give us an overview of your portfolio career in this moment.
My portfolio career in this moment. I guess I'm stepping into the next phase of the next decade of work. But the first decade of my portfolio career, I've spent a lot of that time in education and social care. So the start of my career was in education and social care, supporting children and people, a lot around contextual safeguarding. So those young people who are at key transitions in their lives, experiencing quite a few challenges, whether they were care experienced young people living away from their birth families, or young people just struggling with the transition of adolescence and responsibility and the pressure that comes with being a young person and having expectations of themselves. So I spent a lot of time there in pastoral leadership roles and supporting the well-being of young people. And I grew quite frustrated with the systems of education and social care, and realised that I could probably do a lot more to support young people if I step away from being in that space for a while and create my own thing in terms of how I'd like to engage with young people and support them on those journeys. And I created my own passion project, which turned into an organisation, Imani Academy, where we now deliver youth participation programs and training with young people directly, supporting them with their own character and leadership development, but also training practitioners and those that engage with young people around positive youth engagement and leadership.
Amazing.
So it's taken a little career twist and turns at different points and led me into different spaces around coaching and leadership development with underrepresented groups, but the two often meet in the middle. So my portfolio career has started in the roots of education and social care, but stepped more into like social impact, leadership development, young people and underrepresented groups, and they kind of meet in the middle and complement each other at different points.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's so interesting. As someone who also has a background in education, I still remember when I was doing the Mo course, thinking, wow, this is how we should be communicating and supporting and helping young adults to develop into the adults they want to be, using coaching models rather than using the models I've been trained to use as a teacher or the models I was using on a daily basis. And I was just so much more passionate about the coaching than what I was doing as a teacher. And then for me, coaching feels like a really natural continuation of that. I'm supporting individuals on a one-to-one basis to be what they want to be. How does that feel? Or does any of that make sense or feel similar to you or different?
Yeah, because in my roles when I've been in education or working in social care, I often found that there was very much a deficit model around mentoring and supporting young people. It was often put in place if young people were out of step with the education system, or they were rebellious, or they weren't doing things as they should be to the letter. And often some of that was literally the impulsiveness of adolescence and just managing what's going on for them and connecting with the importance of decision making and what it means to be a leader and taking agency over different things. But yeah, mentoring and the support for young people for me was often done from a deficit point of view. And my school of thought and how I wanted to work with young people was very much about leaning into the strengths that they already have and recognizing those and leading with that rather than what's wrong. And coaching was something that I felt I was doing in the background and supporting young people to kind of step into their leadership and realize what's on the horizon for them and broaden their aspirations. And I think coaching allows young people, as well as adults, that space to kind of pause for a moment and lean into that. Whereas when I was in schools, like I was saying, the mentoring, not saying that mentoring doesn't have a good place, because I'm very much a champion for mentoring as well, but in a school context, often where I've seen it not done so well is through that deficit lens of like, let's fix what's wrong here.
Yeah. And so often in the education system, extra support, whether that's coaching, mentoring or something else, is given to those who most need it. Is there any difference in how you target the support you're providing to young people?
Yeah, so I think everybody can benefit from having a sounding board
I agree.
Like, I think anybody can. And because I'm very much of like really thinking about the leadership focus and supporting ourselves at those where there is challenge, but also where there's space to be stretched. So yeah, my approach really is about providing that space for anybody, but really leaning into the character development aspect. What's it going to do for you if you are able to be given this time, space, and commitment from somebody who's going to give you that support and scaffolding to be able to dream and vision about what's possible. And I think everybody should have the opportunity to dream, to vision, to reflect, to plan. And that should be for anybody, regardless of whether there's a challenge or a success at play. Like, we can reflect on our successes as well as our challenges. So for young people, women, as since we're talking about education, I think, yeah, like you say, it is often where there's a challenge, but providing that space for those who have successes as well, and getting them to think about, well, what's next for me.
Yeah, I love that. And it's no real surprise to me that I'm like, yeah, I want to spread coaching as widely as possible, and something we're both really passionate about. Of course, we want everyone to be involved, which is great. And it sounds like it's coaching around character development, or long-term personal impact, rather than around pragmatic things or challenges that are coming up in the coachees or the participants' lives at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, I think when I'm working with young people, it is about being quite aspirational orientated, but also thinking about their own character strengths, as I said, and leaning into those. But when I'm working with those in the social impact space as a coach, it's recognizing the complexity that they work in. So for those, often the women who I'm working with and people from underrepresented groups, it's often recognizing that with the space that you're working in, and recognizing the complexity that they're navigating, how do we support you to still achieve those goals without burning out? And are often purpose-driven leaders and professionals who've got dreams and aspirations for how they want to see the world, but are often working at 1,000,000 miles per hour. So it's about providing them that space to align that vision, and not burn out, step away from the hustle for a moment, and just think of a roadmap and a structure that works for them, but not ignoring the context that they're working in. So that's often the approach that I'm taking in that space. But as I say, the two often feed each other, even when I'm working with the young people, recognizing the context that they're in, but supporting them to lean into the strengths and shake off some of the labels that society has probably placed upon them, that has created a picture and a persona that they sometimes feel that they have to live up to. I want them to kind of redefine that and reintroduce themselves almost by the end of our coaching or mentoring relationship. Like, who are you now and who do you want to be?
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. And there's two tangents that are coming up in my mind there. One which you and I have already spoken about, planning to joyfully explore in this conversation around intersectionality and around some of the challenges and how coaching can be used to address challenges in present society. And the other tangent, so I just want to catch that but not jump down that just yet. And the other tangent that came to my mind was it's such an interesting idea of how would my coachee, or if you're talking workshops or training, how would the participants like to use this for immediate, pragmatic, this is what I want to change in my life immediately, or for that maybe longer term self-development, or I'm not even sure how to finish that sentence, so I'll just leave it there, that longer term self-development. Any just kind of like headline ideas that come up when I say that's a tangent that I think might have a lot of depth for us to explore?
Yeah, in terms of like the the direction of where coachees want to go. Yeah.
Or what coaching is most appropriate to be used for, or what you typically end up using it for, any of that.
Yeah, so often the clients that I engage with or interact with, they are at points where they've got a lot on their plate. So there's lots going on. And I often trying to find that space for them to look at, well, what are the obstacles in the way? What am I noticing about myself? Who are the people that support me? And reminding them that they don't live on an island, because especially as entrepreneurial, purpose-driven people, and especially people who are Black or women of colour who come from specific groups where there may be challenge, but also strength within that. They're often working, as I say, at a million miles an hour, but also supporting their work is often supporting the groups that they also come from, which means that there sometimes isn't an end to when the workday finishes, because they are part of those communities as well. So it's often about being boundaried. How do we be boundaried with our work, and how do we be boundaried with ourselves? So it's trying to figure out, what does that look like for me in terms of, if these are the goals that I have, how can I be boundaried with my approach but still succeed? So these are some of the conflicts that often come up in those conversations, but we try and frame them in the best way that we can in terms of being joyful and celebratory, but not so oblivious and naive to, as I say, like the context that they're often navigating. And it is quite complex, especially if it's social justice work, for instance, or with the young people, and just recognizing that life is tough, but how do we find those moments of joy, those moments of celebration, with one another and for themselves.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, something that stood out for me was the idea that if they're also they belong to a group they're helping, that work or that engagement in that facet of their life doesn't always end, was kind of intuitively, wow, yeah, that really makes sense, but maybe, and that really isn't obvious. So that really stood out to me, so thank you. Okay, and so like I said, really want to jump down that that lovely tangent, but not just yet. Coming back to that portfolio career, so working with Imani Academy, this passion project, and developing your role in educational and social care. What does a typical week or fortnight look like for you?
Yeah, I feel that sounds like a very loud question. I'm still trying to figure out what does my work week and work structure look like, and how do I provide boundaries for myself as well. I guess 2 to 3 days a week I work with a social justice organisation, supporting their membership community, their campaigners and community organisers in their work, and I offer coaching there, but I also support with ensuring that we reach the right people, essentially our stakeholders and partners. So I hold that as the partnerships and creator of community and partnerships. So I hold that responsibility with that group, and then 2 to 3 days of the rest of the week I'm working on Imani Academy, which means I am creating programs, I am delivering training, whether that's directly with young people around character and leadership development, having lots of conversations with them about the difference between fitting in and belonging, and the conversation that brings up for them. How do they make decisions and choices, and how does that affect their leadership and what it means to be a leader and their own character development journeys. And that will also lead me into facilitating training with those practitioners as well. So it can be a week of delivering and facilitating and working in the social justice space. And then if it's a week like this week, it's more of a pause where I'm creating the content for those sessions. And I may be doing a few coaching sessions in between on different accelerator programs with purpose-driven leaders and women entrepreneurs.
Amazing, thank you for that overview. And you said you're still figuring out, still on that journey of getting to understand or configure your work week or fortnight or month or however time period seems most relevant to you. What are some of the things that you do already that you'd feel comfortable sharing about how you set boundaries with your time or structure your time?
Yeah, one thing that I introduced Was it last year? Yeah, I'd say about mid part through last year was I don't have meetings before 10 a.m. I know I'm not a morning person,
Yeah.
and I like to have a slower start to my morning.
Okay.
And that's just something that I've started to gift myself and not rush to get to my desk to be jumping straight into a Zoom call. So I don't really have any Zoom calls or any Zoom contact screen time before 10 a.m.
Love
just
it.
so that I can have breakfast and not rush my tea. Like I just want to be still for a moment
Yeah.
before I jump straight into the day. And I know that by 3 o'clock, my brain starts to switch off. So any work that requires me to be focused and in the zone, if it's creative work, needs to really be done between 10 and 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And by 3 p.m. I can have any of those meetings or responding to emails. The bits that don't require too much of my energy, I'll do later in the afternoon, but between 10 and 2 is my creative time to just get stuff done and focus. And then if I've got sessions in the evening, I'll just take my time on those days where I know that need to preserve my energy for facilitation in the later in the day. But it's taken me a bit of time to create that rhythm, and I'm still learning what works for me as a freelancer and somebody that also works part-time in other organizations.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing. And when you said about the no calls before 10 a.m. and saying I need to give that to myself, I thought, you're also gifting it to other people. Gifting your presence or gifting a greater presence in those calls. And then there's also the gifting to people that really didn't want to book that meeting with you before 10 a.m. themselves, but maybe weren't in a place where they understood that boundary for themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
I start work at 10 a.m. on my self-employed days, and that feels just feels perfect for me. That question came to mind particularly because one of the memories that stands out from when we first met a few years ago, Imani, was from any of the Zoom calls, in those group Zoom calls we were in, was that you left Fridays for your admin days, or you didn't have any calls or anything on Friday, and it was just admin on those days. And for some reason that's a memory that has always been strongly attached to you in my mind.
Yeah.
How did that technique or strategy evolve or stop serving you? Yeah,
so I used to do a Zoom free Friday, didn't I? As you can hear by the used to, it's not really stuck. But Zoom free Fridays for me were at a point in my life at that time where I was doing a lot, all at the same time, and I just needed one day a week where I was not looking at a screen and having somebody else looking back at me. And also seeing myself as well. I just needed that space. I'm happy to just have a phone call, but I don't really want to be on camera. And that is something that I still do sometimes, where I might message somebody if I've got meetings on a Friday and say, just to let you know, I'm still happy to have that call, but I might not have my camera on. It's just being aware that sometimes I just don't want to be on screen 24/7 and have someone staring straight back at me, and me also being hyper aware of myself on the screen too. But Fridays now I use for coaching calls and admin in the afternoons, and in the mornings and early afternoon I'll have a few calls. Some of those will be on Zoom or they could be phone calls. I just go with what my energy is saying, and people who I work with now are also often in that space as well, so it doesn't feel like I'm being like, oh, okay, you don't want to be on screen. It doesn't feel rude. We've all got those types of boundaries with each other, so it feels comfortable for me to say, oh, today's not a Zoom camera day, so you're welcome to turn yours off as well, and we can just have our call that way. And I think it's just introducing new norms, especially since a lot of our time is spent on screen these days, but being on screen wasn't new to me prior to COVID and pandemic and work arrangement adjustments, but because we're doing that a lot more now, just think it's okay to invite new ways of working into even your virtual working day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny how during lockdown we all got so used to using video call as a medium, and then quickly absorb this, oh, and I'm expected to be on video on camera the whole time.
Yeah.
But then also probably didn't take that long for people to become like accepting of the nuances of that, or we're using it so much maybe we learn quite quickly, perhaps, I'm not sure. I'm going to share something with you that I do when I'm off camera or when I don't have to be on camera. Sometimes I end up lying down on my bedroom floor when I'm working from home, and I'll put like a bag or a backpack or a pillow behind my head, and I'll be lying down, and it doesn't change the quality of my coaching, I hope. But it just feels right. It's like the right space for me to be having that conversation, and it's funny the different things we do. Maybe just like your body posture or your position when we don't have to be on camera. But when I'm on camera, I wouldn't lounge in the same way, I wouldn't make myself comfortable in the same way.
Yeah, it's true. I notice similar things. Like I'm more likely to pace up and down if I'm not on screen. I can walk around, move my legs, realize, I actually haven't stood up from my desk for the last two hours. I think it's just important to connect with your body and just move a bit more, because if we have more, I find conversations are richer as well when I get a chance to move around. Don't know if that's just me, but that's what I find.
No, I'm sure you're not alone there. And it's funny how it's perfectly normal for us to see someone walking around while moving, or pacing, to have their thoughts, or sitting in a different posture while they're talking, because typically coaching conversations are long conversations of half an hour. But we have this idea that, or often at least I have this idea that it's not right for me to do that, or that's
it's not
like
professional.
Yeah. what a silly idea to have absorbed. Okay, interesting to explore that. And coming back to your story, and if that's where your portfolio is now, kind of 2 or 3 days a week, partners and community building there, 2 or 3 days a week with Imani Academy and this accelerator, this incubator accelerator.
Accelerator programs.
Mm-hmm. So if that's the portfolio now, tell us where you were in your life when coaching first came across your horizon.
When I was first introduced to Mo, it was during. I started my Mo coaching course in October 2020, so I had not long just been made redundant from a role that I was working in full time. I was also just finishing my character education master's degree. And I was thinking about what are my next steps? Am I going to go back into full-time work and continue to do Imani Academy work part-time? Or am I going to take the leap and do this freelance thing and literally just go for it? And that's where Mo coaching came in. So it was almost like a double benefit for me. I kind of needed that space to engage with what coaching could be for me, because I needed a coach to support me to make some of those decisions. But I also had a lot of people reaching out to me for support through that time when everybody was made redundant or on furlough, and experiencing just a lot of challenges. And I was doing quite a lot of pro bono support as a mentor and a coach that wasn't certified, but I'd had different coaching certificates and programs that I'd been on, and I thought, if I want to support people in the best way, let me just do a bit of additional scaffolding here and do a coaching course. So that's what I did with Mo, whilst also having my own coach as well. So it came at a time for me where I kind of needed that space to upskill for myself, but I needed coaching at a point that there was just lots going on, and it was quite a difficult time of redundancy and, well, what do I do next? I don't have that safety net of just jumping from one job to the next, which I was quite used to doing.
Yeah, thank you. And what made you choose Mo as the training provider for that scaffolding that you wanted?
The gifted approach. I was gifted a place. At the time, I wasn't able to afford the coaching course itself, and having that gift model of coaching really spoke to me in that sense of like, actually, when the time is right and the time comes again, I'll be able to gift my time back, and I'll be able to pay in a different way. And that I really liked that, in the sense that it didn't feel transactional, and that it really spoke to the personal development and the support that goes into having a coaching space that feels like a community, which is what Mo has been, and that's how we've met, and other people within the Mo community that I still speak to. And I really liked that compared to other coaching courses, which felt very much salesy, like, if you get what I mean. Whereas this speaks more to my vibe.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. I think coaching is such a personal and compassionate tool or thing, and even when a training provider can communicate really clearly the humanity in their course, or in the way in which they really center that compassion, when you see a huge price tag next to it, it can still make us feel that kind of that tension of, oh, you know, is this really advertising, or is this authenticity? That's how I feel when I see that. And then, when you're on the Mo course, have you got any vivid memories or anything specific from the Mo course that stands out?
I just appreciated the care that was given to the training. I don't know, that's just always the one thing that sticks with me. Kat and Daniela were the trainers for my Mo coach training, and they just brought so much energy and a balance that each of them bring. And I just really appreciated their authenticity and the care that they gave to the coach training and to us. And then I was able to have Kat as a coach as well. And we've stayed in contact, and I just appreciate the energy and the care that's given by both of them. And the space that was opened up for us to just be gently challenged and pushed in the right direction, and have that space to practice. And it was just very structured and very well cared for.
Love that. And huge shout out to both Kat and Daniela, who incidentally have also been inspirational figures in my coaching journey as well. They both have such a compassionate humanity, such a gentleness, and both have such wisdom. Kat, Daniela, if you're listening, we love you. Thank you.
Shout out to Daniela.
Yeah. Okay, and then, do you remember what you did immediately following the Mo course? I'm thinking, the following week, the following month, that felt like an immediate next step from that Mo course.
At that time, I was a serial learner. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always engaging in some kind of learning. How I engage with learning now is very different to how I engaged with learning back then. Back then, learning for me is very much about, I need to credentialize myself and prove that I've got the credentials to be doing X, which I've been on a journey with. And part of that journey was I ran a learning marathon, a huddle, with an organization called Huddlecraft, which was a 6-month learning journey with 10 other people around the theme of education for liberation, which was about bringing people together who were coming from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, but were all connected to the theme of what it means to be a liberated learner, and connecting with their experience of education, what learning means to them, whether that was from a homeschooling parent, unschooling and unlearning different schools of thought, being a learning designer, lots of different backgrounds essentially, and we all explored together for 6 months what that meant, and we had different learning questions that guided us. And that was something that I hosted pretty much straight after the Mo course, and that allowed me to engage with my coaching skills, because I was supporting a group of 10 other people, and I was also going on that journey myself, because it's a peer-to-peer program. So that was something that I went straight into after that, which allowed me to exercise my facilitation skills, but also my coaching skills, which has kind of led me on that journey as a coach and a facilitator in terms of what I do now when I'm not doing my work with Imani Academy.
Brilliant, thank you. And then, yeah, you mentioned Kat and Daniela as being two of the people that trained your maybe early figures in that coaching, that felt like mentors or felt like mentors in some way. Are there any other peers, mentors, or even mentees that you'd like to mention or nod to that have been an important part of your story?
That's a good question. I would say I've had many mentors throughout my teenage years and also adolescence and adulthood. People who probably don't realise they've been mentors to me. Whether that be people within the community, people who are within my own family who've inspired me in different ways, just through the traits that they have, or things that they've done, or even things that they've said to me that they don't realise, actually, you know what, that stuck with me for some time. And if I didn't understand it back then, I do now. So there's those many people. And then I would say in my school years, I'd had mentors who supported me at points where there was challenges for me. I'd experienced a family bereavement. When I was 13, 14, my granddad passed away and we were very, very close. And people often think, oh, it's only a grandparent, but
No.
Yeah. If you've had a grandparent who you had a significant close relationship with, when they leave, especially through when you're experiencing grief, it can be a very challenging point. And it was at a point where it was that GCSE year, there's lots going on there, and you've got to figure out what your next steps are for your future. And it was very much like, okay, this spanner's been thrown in the works. Now what do I do? And I was fortunate to have a mentor who supported me in the way that I needed at that time. So I'd say that was my first kind of introduction to somebody outside of, who wasn't a family member or someone in the community, who was able to be like, you know what, Imani, let me bring you back onto this boat, and be the armbands that I needed, essentially, is what I could say. And she was brilliant. So I'd say that was my first experience, in the sense of there are people out there who do really want the best for you, and they can support you when you really need it. And I guess in another sense, I've had mentors who supported me in business and my own leadership journey. I was fortunate to be mentored by West Midlands Mayor, Andy Street, and he's been a great support in my leadership journey as stepping into entrepreneurship. And we still speak now, and although we come from two different worlds, we've learnt a lot from each other, in the sense of an insight into what it's like to be me, but also working with the work that I do and working with young people. So Andy Street's been able to have an insight into that world, but also he's been able to support me in terms of leadership and some of the challenges that come with that, and understanding what he's had to do and the challenges that come with that, and offering insight and guidance. So we've learned a lot from each other in that sense. So yeah, I'd say those are two people at two different ends of the spectrum, where my leadership journey, but also the personal aspect of what you do when you're experiencing those challenges in life, and you don't want to sink, but you need somebody to kind of push you in the right direction and support you on the next phase of your journey.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, bit of a long answer, but yeah.
Apology rejected. I love that. I think it's great that we've heard that. And yeah, I love that you also caught that the value in those relationships, those kinds of relationships, is so often two-way. It's a two-way street, and just as you've benefited from their support, they've benefited from your role in that connection. And I think that's always the case in my experience in mentorships. But it can often be painted as just a one-way street, or just the mentor, the mentee benefiting from a mentor's experience. So I'm really happy you caught that, because it's something I really agree with, or really believe strongly myself.
Yeah, and I'd even say you asked about like any mentees or coaches that have taught me anything, because I've had worked with so many young people. I'm now, I say at an age like I'm really old, but at an age where some of the young people who I mentored when they were 14, 15, reach back out to me now in they're now 19, 20, and will message me and be like, oh, I'm so grateful for the time that we had together. I'm doing this now. Or they want to come back and work with me or shadow and just stay connected in a different way. And it's interesting how those mentoring relationships grow and mature as your coachee or mentee does as well. And they've inspired me in lots of different ways in terms of where I was also at in that point when I was mentoring or coaching them. And just seeing the growth that they've been on is quite inspiring in the sense of,
Yeah.
yeah, you've experienced a lot of adversity and challenge as well, but look, you've managed to make it through and see the other side. And just seeing that glow that they now have is often a very big reminder in terms of, yeah, what role we play for people at different points in their lives and how that also impacts us as we grow on our own journeys as well. As you're basically, I often say, like, you're a guide, essentially walking side by side with people. So what can you learn in that experience as you're walking with them?
Brilliant. Yeah. And with coaching, we're with people when we're working one-to-one for a certain period of time, and often that, like you said, this example of checking back in after a certain period of time with someone and it taking you back to where you started from, and it probably took them back to where they started from as well. Thinking about it through a coaching lens, that kind of broad view perspective of, hey, here's where we were when we first met and started exploring coaching together. Those are often the moments that I find most interesting, or most, I don't know, there's a certain, there's a real momentous feeling when you get to do a reflection over a period of 6 months, or maybe even longer periods of time, and hey, do you remember where we were, or like what was being said in those moments? Always feels really powerful to have that reflection point.
Definitely.
And then just going back to finishing the Mo course, is there any advice that you'd give someone who's a newly qualified coach? Potentially, you could use yourself as I can imagine what advice I'd have liked to receive, if that's easier or more interesting.
I probably would say to trust yourself. Trust yourself is one thing I would say. Probably this is advice that I would have given myself back then as well. Like, trust that you have the ability to be able to do that attentive listening. You don't necessarily need all of your notes on with your questions that you've got in the bag that you're going to ask. It's just about really taking that moment to pause and tune in to what your coachee is saying. And the questions do come, because I find now as a coach, I'm very intuitive in my coaching, and I just trust that I will know what to say depending on what my coachee says, if that makes sense. So I guess, for a newly qualified coach, I'd say trust yourself. Coaching for me was very intuitive, and it took me a bit of time to believe that I know what I'm doing here, and there was a reason why I wanted to do this course in the first place, because people were already trusting me with their journeys as it is. I just wanted that extra scaffolding to feel that I could support them in the right way. So trust yourself. You're a coach, you're qualified, you're certified. Yeah, go with it.
I really feel like you're speaking to me directly there. I mean, you are on this call, but also in giving that advice. So maybe something about where you said it, or maybe about something where I heard it. But I really heard that directly. Thank you, Imani. I will trust myself.
You're welcome.
And I think that intuition and the role it plays in coaching is fascinating. Do you feel like that intuition was something that was always there for you, or it's something that you've developed or that's emerged?
I think I started this call by saying that I'm a quietly confident person. And that level of intuition has always been with me, but sometimes at various points I've pushed it away, or just felt like I've needed to do things in a different way because that's what society says. So yeah, I'd say I've kind of grown into that, trusting my intuition and staying with it rather than ignoring it, which is very much, I feel, connected to, yeah, the quiet confidence that I feel I have. And I say quiet because I don't feel like I need to be loud with it. I often do what I do, work quietly in the background. I might emerge every now and then and say, hey, I'm still here, I'm doing what I'm doing. But I am, in previous points, I probably felt like I needed to be here, there and everywhere and make it known that this is what I'm doing, because it felt like that's what I needed to do to kind of keep up with myself and the pace of life generally. But I just don't feel that I need to do that anymore. So yeah, just being comfortable with that and trusting the intuition that I know I have and sticking with it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, modesty is definitely an adjective I'd happily use to describe you. Or yeah, that grounded, quiet confidence, love it. And so if there's this idea that, hey, I always had this intuition, are there any strategies you use to allow it to emerge or to develop it?
Something I probably learned in my other coaching relationship that I had with a somatic coach was about connecting with the body, the nervous system, and responding to what it needs and recognizing what happens for me in certain situations and not ignoring that. So if something comes up for me that feels challenging, rather than going straight to, oh, but my head feels this, what does the body feel, do, and say? And listening and leading with that, and just noticing at different points what happens when there's joy or there's frustration or there's sadness, and kind of connecting with that a bit more and allowing myself to have that space and time to reflect and tune into who I am with a somatic coach, I think has helped me in my decision making, how I respond to things, how I choose to do things in work and in life generally, has been influenced by that, which is why I say I've been on a journey with it, which is why I feel I'm a lot more confident now to just actually, I am going to listen to what my intuition says here, because this is what the nervous system needs.
Wicked, yeah. I heard that in that listening to your intuition isn't just something that happens internally in your mind, also in your body. Yeah, and listening to your body is something that allowed you to maybe connect more deeply, or to simplify that connection with your intuition. Yeah,
I would say so. We spend a lot of time in our heads,
so much
naturally.
Yeah.
And
too much time.
I'm not saying I'm perfect. I definitely still do spend a lot of time in my own head, but I notice it more, and I think it's having that self-awareness to notice when you are doing it, to give yourself that grace of just a 2-minute pause and being like, okay, what's coming up for me? What is it that I'm going to lead with? And it becomes more of a habit that naturally you respond by listening to both of those parts of you, the head and what the body is saying, and then feeling like, okay, this is the one I'm going to lead with. Maybe it's the head today, but today it's going to be what the body needs.
Love that. Thank you.
So what it's saying.
Brilliant. And then going from some specific practice, or actually, no, let's stay with that. You mentioned somatic practice in our call last week. Would you just share a little bit for the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the term or with that practice, of kind of a brief outline of what that is? And then would you go on to tell us a little bit about how you use it, or maybe how you learnt to use it, or how you started using it, or pick your own question that seems more compelling.
I was thinking, which one do you want me to go with here?
Yeah, question stacking.
I'm not a somatic coach myself, but I've had somatic coaching. It is something that I'm exploring in terms of how I can use it in my work, especially with social justice. in the social justice space with campaigners and community organisers who are working in environments that are quite emotive and require a lot of their own energy. So how do they find those spaces to pause, to breathe, to rest, and using rest as a practice of giving them that space and time back for themselves and just honouring that. So it's something that I'm exploring in that space in terms of how can we bring somatics into social justice work and in a coaching practice with people who are community organisers working in complexity. But my introduction to somatic coaching for me was really understanding about the body, those moments of pause and being able to breathe. Often it can be connected with like meditation practices or awareness in terms of doing different things that the body needs. Some people do tapping or can't remember the phrase now, but tapping is what's coming to me and I'm doing this. You can see what I'm doing, Alex.
Tapping shoulders or sometimes collarbone or temple as a part of the body that's particularly accessible. Or
exactly, and bringing awareness to the body. And something that my coach at the time used to say to me, like, oh, if you get an email about a specific topic, where do you feel it in your body? Like, rather than what does your head say, where do you feel it in your body? Like, where does the frustration live? Does the tension live in your shoulders? Do you feel it in your stomach? Or do you feel a tight feeling in your chest? Or do you notice that you haven't been breathing for a while? So she used to ask me questions like that. I'd be like, actually, I did notice that. anytime I get an email about X, I realise that I take like a sharp inhale and then probably not breathing as naturally as I was before. Just little things. Like, it sounds quite, for some people it can sound very like airy fairy and woolly, but for me it was a good way of releasing some of that anxiety that can often be held in different parts of the body where you don't realise, why is this tension in my shoulders so strong? And then you realise, actually, it's connected to this. So use it. That's how I was introduced to it. But I've also seen the benefits it can have in spaces where people are experiencing trauma.
And in this example of email, you use tension. Is the emotion that you're exploring or that you're engaging with always tension?
For me, or just generally?
In general, I'm thinking in somatic practices, are there, are we just focusing on emotions that are around tension, or, can that be the exact same exploration but with maybe joy at opening an email? Or
definitely. Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's about a spectrum of emotions, but just recognizing how do you embody them, and how do you engage with them? How do you notice them? Do you ignore them? Do you quieten them? How do you bring the subconscious into the conscious space? Like all of those things that we do as a autopilot, how do you take yourself off autopilot to actually engage with it and really, really enjoy it? Because one of the things we always talked about as well is like, how do you actually celebrate yourself? Do you just see it as, it's just another thing that I've done and move on? How do you actually just sit with it for a moment and engage in it? So it's not just about challenges, it's also about joy.
Brilliant. And just define somatic coaching or somatic practice for us in a sentence or two.
Oh gosh, I can only describe it in a way that it would be for me, which would be about connecting with the nervous system and the body to connect with the nervous system and the body to bring the subconscious into the conscious.
Brilliant.
That would be my personal definition.
Thank you. It seems really closely related to coaching. I so often describe coaching as bringing wisdom from the subconscious into the conscious. So to do so in a, hey, I'm going to do so rather than using kind of rationality or conversation. I'm going to get someone to explore what they're feeling, not in their head or their heart, but in their physical body. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, for sure. Just connecting with all the feels.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear about, you're saying, hey, this is something I'm exploring. I'd love to hear about that, but I'm really conscious of time. And I also really want to make space to hear about what change you'd like to see in the coaching industry or community.
Yeah, so what change would I like to see in the coaching industry or community?
Yeah.
Accessibility is just something that's on my mind at the moment in terms of coaching. I think, as I mentioned earlier, it can be quite expensive, or something you've got to invest quite a lot of money in terms of accreditations, but also for people you're engaging with, how do we make it more accessible in terms of their own personal development? Like, I've been fortunate to be able to be an associate coach with different organisations, so I've been happy with the monetary value and how much my time is valued at. But I think there's also a space for making coaching accessible for people who perhaps do not have the funds in that sense. So I offer my coaching, when it's one-to-one and not associate work, on a sliding scale. So it's almost like a pay as you feel within these boundaries and brackets, so that people can choose. It's basically me just trusting that people will choose the tier and the package that feels appropriate for where they are financially in their lives at the moment. And that's because often coaching can be very expensive, and it's very salesy and driven by, like, they're going to change your life, which that isn't my philosophy at all. So I guess there's a few things there around the language of coaching and how we invite people into that coaching relationship, but also the accessibility of coaching from a financial standpoint for people to invest in their personal development. How can you make it accessible?
Lovely. And I just share something similar to add another related example to that conversation. With my practice, I've calculated if I'm going to work 4 days a week with no more than 4 sessions a day, because that's my limit of coaching sessions I can do in a day and still be present and impactful. And I know what my living wage is based on my general life expenses. I'd need to charge this much per session. And then I tell clients, this is the rate, my hourly rate. But if that doesn't work for you, please suggest a rate. And if it's above my living wage, that's a rate we'll coach at. Kind of similar to you. Just to add another example, because I don't often see or hear about it. So yeah, it's really relevant. You say, hey, this is something a change I'd like to see, or what I'd love the coaching community to be talking about. Because yeah, I don't think it is super common, and it is something that can be really expensive. Are there any other techniques or strategies you've seen coaches using that you felt have been really good examples of integrating accessibility to their practice or their entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so a skill swap, almost like a skill swap and share. Like, I can offer you X amount of coaching hours if you're able to help me with something. So somebody might be able to afford 2 coaching sessions but can't afford 5, which is what they would really want and need.
Yeah.
So they are offered the other 3 to make up the 5, but in exchange for something that they're able to offer their coach. That might be some marketing and communication support, which is a skill that they might have that the coach needs. So they're able to swap their skills for time.
Yeah, I love that. And it recognises that there's so much value in the world that's beyond financial or monetary value. But often when we're thinking of, here's something I do for commas work, or here's something to do as part of my job, the compensation has to be monetary. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just finding different ways to still collaborate, support and work with people, but how can you do that is an economy of something else other than money?
Yeah. And yeah, it feels so important for coaching to be accessible, widely accessible to those most in need, not just those with money. How can we get further with that as a coaching community? How can we progress that?
I think it goes back to yeah, the language of coaching sometimes, it does depend on your sector of coaching. Like if you're coaching executives or people who want to make, I don't know, six figures, those types of coaches. It depends what kind of coach you are, but I think there is space to talk about how coaching is marketed, in a sense. But yeah, I think because of the industry of coaching I'm in, it is often with people who are working in social impact, social justice. So there isn't often that, well, I don't find anyway, that salesy approach. But in the wider coaching community, if you as a coach are looking for other coaches to have conversations with about money and accessibility, it can be a challenge because it does just feel like everybody talks about sales and marketing.
Yeah, and maybe this false idea that the more you're charging, the better the coach you are, or the more you're being paid, the more valuable your work. It's definitely an idea that I, probably absorbed when I started coaching, and certainly came across when I was coaching, or soon after I qualified.
But I think the approach that you shared, that you have at the moment, in terms of explaining the living wage, how many hours, how many days a week that you work, is good to have with coaching clients because it communicates that transparency. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about transparency in terms of when you're onboarding clients.
Yeah, definitely. I think. Ooh, can you ever have too much transparency, Imani? I feel like we're right. Go on.
Where is this a new conversation? Where do we go?
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge one. Maybe just a nice,
a
nice,
boundaried transparency is what I go for.
That feels measured and wise. I definitely think, absolute transparency or unconditional transparency could have its problems, and I'm going into quite a literal image. That's where my mind goes when I think of that. I mean, you're looking at the street opposite me. I'm like, I don't want that transparency.
Not that way.
And on that note, I feel like let's adjourn this podcast. Imani, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your grace and wisdom and experience to the table and sharing with us what you've been doing, what you're doing at the moment, and what your thoughts are. It's been a really enjoyable conversation for me, and I'm sure a really useful conversation for all our listeners.
No, thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me. It was good for us to chat. Thank you.
And that concludes the end of the episode with your new host, Alex Smith. And what an episode to really get us going. I think it touched on some really fantastic points there about starting your own practice, about really listening to yourself and your body, and just understanding what it means to be an intuitive coach, trusting in yourself, believing in yourself, and pushing forward in whatever direction you'd like to go in, whilst also taking the time to reflect and recuperate and do what feels right for you. If you would like to be a podcast guest yourself, then please do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear some stories from the Mo community and hear your take on your coaching practice, or where else your coaching may have showed up that might not be in the traditional sense of the word. If you'd like to do so, please do get in touch with me at maisie@mofoundation.com. That's MAISIE @mofoundation.com. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye for now. Now, this is a message for anybody who thinks that life coaching might be the right calling for you, but you're not sure how to attract new clients. So on the 17th of April, we will be having our next Mo Digital Academy. Keely Vuong White, the founder of Kia Ora Coaching, is going to be talking to us about how to attract clients as a new life coach, a 90-minute long introduction to marketing. Now, she's had a fantastic life and has spent 15 years in international corporate marketing and has also learned a thing or two about setting up a business. And she's also done her coaching with the Mo Foundation. So she's going to be running a fantastic workshop. We hope to see you there. If you're interested and you'd like to register, then please find more information on our website. That's mofoundation.com/calendar. Thanks so much, and we will see you there.